Okay, so we are live now and we are being recorded. Good evening, everyone. Item 1 on our agenda, which has been shared before, apologies for absence and substitute members. As discussed, I believe we have, I think we don't have a substitute member here tonight. We welcome Joe Mail and we welcome Andy Pennell to help us out on this particular meeting and give us presentations about the respective scope of works here. Do we have received any apologies for absence?
Yes,
Harry?
I did receive apologies from Councillor Penfold, and I note that not all the panel members we were expecting tonight are here yet, so if they don't turn up, we will note their apologies.
Okay, good. Let's move on to item 2, declarations of interest and party whip. Do we have declarations of interest? Okay, that's a no. Any affected interest? Anyone? Okay, that's a no as well. Okay, thank you for that. We move on to to item 3, which is a recap of module 1. Harry is currently sharing a quick slide on the screen. We had a very good session. Harry produced excellent minutes for the whole meeting, 6 pages, 2,442 words, quite extensive. Thank you, Harry. Well done. Very comprehensive. We had a presentation from the head of housing and housing strategy enabling projects manager, who reviewed the recommendations from the registered providers of social housing review held in 2021. We have picked up some recommendations, which we will consider later in the review. We also had a very good session, good explanations on the housing allocations policy, the housing strategy, and the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. I think we're all very pleased to learn that the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy seems to be very effective. Any questions on module 1 by anyone? Observations? All good? Excellent. Thank you. Then we move on to item 4, which is the presentation from the Assistant Director of Planning, Joe Mail, who joined us on the call. So, Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to appear in front of the panel. My understanding is that this particular inquiry is the sort of part of a two-stage process in terms of looking into affordable housing. And I've been tasked with looking at 2 specific questions. One in relation to the quantum of affordable housing that's needed by Bracknell, and also some concerns that have been raised about instances where affordable housing isn't provided on site. So what I've sought to do is basically to put together a brief presentation which will set out how affordable housing policy is devised and also how it operates, and therefore it should form a sort of a snapshot of affordable housing, how it's achieved through the planning system. So Harry's just going to run through the slides for me. So thank you, Harry. So firstly, the National Planning Policy Framework, which is the NPPF, that sets out government policy which local authorities are required to adhere to, and specifically in the preparation of their local plans. So it's very specific that it supports the government's current objective of significantly boosting the supply of houses, and it requires that the development plan that each local authority is tasked with providing includes strategic policies which make sufficient provision for the homes that are required within the local authority area, including affordable housing. And these strategic policies, they need to be informed by a local housing needs assessment, which is a document, it's a consultancy report that will be commissioned as part of the evidence base that underpins any local plan. Where this local housing needs assessment identifies a need for affordable housing, the planning policy should specify the type of affordable housing that's required within the area, and that it should be expected to be provided on site unless off-site provision or appropriate financial contributions can be robustly justified, or there is a secondary and less used reason where there's an agreed approach that it would contribute, by providing it elsewhere, it would contribute to the objective of creating mixed and balanced communities elsewhere. Thank you, Harry. So I think one of the key things for us to recognise is the role of viability in identifying and producing a local plan policy. So the National Planning Policy Guidance, which is known as the NPPG, that amplifies policies within the framework, and it considers viability both in respect of plan making and decision taking. And it identifies that the role of the viability assessment is primarily to be undertaken at the plan making stage, and it should be used to ensure that policies are realistic and that the total cumulative cost of all relevant policies will not undermine the deliverability of the plan. So what that's referring to there is that, as you appreciate, that there will be other local plan policies that seek contributions to support other forms of infrastructure, such as community facilities or open space or other things like that, as well as the requirement for affordable housing. So the role of the viability assessment is to make sure that the sites that are allocated for housing, when a developer looks at the need to provide all those contributions, affordable housing, open space contributions, any primary education contributions as well, that they're all taken into account and that the site still remains viable. In order to do that, as part of the local plan process, strategic sites have to be individually assessed for viability if they're critical to deliver the strategic priorities of the plan. So as you appreciate, our local plan identifies the total number of houses that we're seeking to provide every year within the borough. And if the sites that we've allocated in the local plan are of a size that they're considered to be fundamental to the delivery of those numbers, then we should be individually testing them for their viability. However, the NPPG does set out that we can take a more typology approach to be used for other sites, and that's what we've done. Viability is also relevant at the decision-making stage, so as part of a planning application. So the starting point is where a local plan has a policy and it's been subject to viability testing, any application that complies with that policy should be assumed to be viable. And the onus is on the developer or the applicant that if there are particular circumstances that apply in that area that require, that would impact on the viability of a scheme, that's for them to demonstrate. And the examples provided in the NPPG would be circumstances, potentially economic changes since the plan was adopted. If a very particular unusual type of development is proposed that might have significant costs associated with its delivery, or any site-specific costs, and that an example of that might be where a brownfield site is being used and it's potentially subject to contamination that requires remediation as part of the development process. Thank you, Harry. So that's sort of the background, and then looking specifically at our policy. So our local plan was adopted in March of last year, and policy LP16 sets out our affordable housing requirements for any development coming forward. It applies to developments on sites of 10 or more, and that's a gross number of dwellings, or on sites with a site area of 0.5 hectares or greater. And it sets out a policy requirement for 35% of all the new homes to be provided as affordable. And the tenure and the mix and type of affordable homes to be delivered should be informed by the council's most up-to-date evidence of identified needs. And as you'll be well aware, this is an annual report that is produced by the housing section and published on the council's website. Thank you, Harry. So I think it's important to look back at how policy LP16 was actually derived and to see how we came to the 10 unit threshold and also the 35% figure that we've applied. So in accordance with the NPPF, any strategic policy needs to be informed by a local housing needs assessment. And in this case, ours dates from February 2016. We call it the SHMAR, and it was produced for all Berkshire authorities as well as South Bucks. and it identified for Bracknell a net need for 228 affordable homes a year, which represented about 35% of the total housing need that was required at this time. And therefore, based on this evidence, the initial policy was drafted that required 35% affordable housing on sites of 11 net or more units. I don't know if the bottom has just, that seems the slide, Harry, seems to just run away. I can send an updated version, but if you forgive me, I'm just going to have a look across to my slide. So,
no.
Sorry.
Sorry.
So we then had an updated version of the housing needs assessment from March 2021, and that was done by an alternative consultant called Iceni and was specific to Bracknell. And at that time, it identified an annual need for 338 affordable homes in Bracknell Forest, which actually represents 55% of the overall identified housing need. Now, that's the most recent evidence that we have, and I think that provides the answer to the first question that I think I was tasked with, which is what is the total need for affordable housing within Bracknell on an annual basis? And as I say, this evidence dates from 2021, but that's the most up-to-date evidence the planning section has, and that identifies a need for 338 dwellings. As part of this report, it recommended that 69% of all affordable housing should be provided as rented provision with an equal split between social rent and affordable rent, and 31% should be low-cost home ownership. To achieve this, it recommended a reduction in the site size threshold to 10 units and for that to be a gross figure rather than the 11-unit net figure that had been originally drafted in the policy. However, it did recognise that the viability evidence would influence the affordable housing policies, both in terms of their percentage requirement and also the affordable tenure profile. And I've put, we can provide corrected slides, but I've provided in that document links through to the evidence base of both those reports, so you can have sight of them should you want to. Next slide, please, Harry. So we then moved on. So that was how we actually came up with the figure for the policy. So as I mentioned, we took the original draft policy was based on the 2016 SHMA evidence and identified a need for 35% affordable housing. The viability testing for the plan, because of the timings of the subsequent evidence base, was done on the basis of this policy, and it identified that at this level, only 65% of all anticipated development would be able to provide the required 35% affordable housing, together with the other financial obligations that we've talked about in relation to community infrastructure or open space, etc., while still providing a robust land value and developer profit margin, which is an essential requirement within the government's guidance. It did identify that a number of the urban sites would have marginal viability and would be likely to generate lower levels of affordable housing. And as part of this testing process, it did consider whether we should be reducing the percentage of affordable housing specified within the policy. However, the conclusion was that we shouldn't, because that would result in the delivery of less housing, affordable housing overall, from those sites that could viably meet this requirement. And therefore, it concluded that the policy target of 35% would be sustainable, recognising that some, specifically the town centre sites, which are some of our strategic sites, would be challenged in terms of their viability. Next slide, please. So then looking at the adoption of the policy, so once we've put together a plan and had it viability tested, it's something that has to go forward for examination by inspectors, and they have to identify whether or not it is sound and meets a number of tests, including compliance with national policy. We had two inspectors, And the comments that they made in relation to the affordable housing element specifically is referred to on the screen. So they recognised that LP16 would not meet the annual requirement of 338 affordable units as evidenced, as identified in the evidence base. However, they concluded overall that the affordable housing target was viable. They recognised that the viability of the town centre sites was less strong. However, also identified that because the council owned a number of these sites, they might accept a lower land value so as to meet the policy objective of delivering affordable housing. And on the basis of that information, they concluded the council's strategy for affordable housing is effective and justified, whilst being flexible enough so as not to prejudice the delivery of development. So I'm anticipating that one of your questions might be, why didn't we go for a higher target, given the fact that we know that the 35% is not going to meet the total need that's been identified? Why didn't we go for a higher target? And the response to that is because we know that that would actually mean that a number of the sites would be, at the moment, 31% of the sites have been identified as potentially not viable. That is likely to increase, and that would be as a result, if we did increase the policy requirement, it is likely to result in a lower level of overall deliverability across the plan period and less affordable housing. So, yes, Dot.
On that, Joe, do we, in the design element, because we keep on saying the word affordable housing, what worries me is these are apartments, aren't they? The very few of the sites that we have in the town centre are what I refer to as houses. It's mostly apartments, isn't it?
Yes, I mean the term affordable housing is in relation to all residential development potentially, and it is, I think the key is the affordability. So yes, I think it's a slightly different aspect in terms of which sites have been allocated. I don't think that that's necessarily relevant to the affordable housing policy, which does apply to all forms of housing, whether it's flatted development or individual properties.
Okay, just the terminology. Thanks, Danny.
Yeah. So just moving on to the sort of the second point that I believe that the panel is interested in why do we not always achieve affordable housing on site? And as I've already mentioned, both the NPPF and our local plan policy, LP16, identify that that should be the starting point. And it's only in exceptional circumstances with alternatives to on-site provision be accepted. So an example of an exceptional circumstance that we've had to accept recently was an instance where it wasn't practical for a registered provider to deliver or manage on-site affordable housing. And as a result, we'd look at alternative provision either off-site or through commuted sums. We're aware of this as a problem. And I imagine that the panel has sought information from other colleagues in terms of the particular issue in relation to funding of the registered providers at the moment. But this is a sort of industry-wide issue that we've experienced. And partially in response to that, we've actually recently adopted a housing supplementary planning document, and the link to that is on the slide. And that looks really specifically at this instance to provide as robust approach as we possibly can to instances where developers say that they can't provide on-site affordable housing. Next slide, thank you, Harry. So the housing SPD sets out that commuted sums will only be agreed, one, where a positive benefit can be demonstrated in terms of the meeting the council's priorities for affordable housing, or secondly, if evidence has been provided and accepted by the council that it's not possible to deliver the affordable housing obligations on site. And the example that I've just given is where a registered provider hasn't been found who will take on the transfer of any affordable housing secured through the Section 106. And in such instances, we do take a robust approach in terms of asking them for evidence, asking the developer for evidence of all the registered providers that they've contacted and copies of the replies that have been received. Where it's accepted that this isn't feasible, we will accept a financial contribution in lieu of the affordable housing. And there's an affordable housing commuted sum calculator which calculates the payment in each case. And we worked with the housing department in coming up with that figure that we put to the developer. Thank you, Harry. There are, however, a couple of ways where above policy levels of affordable housing can be achieved on site. So the first one is through grant funding, and we're seeing increasing interest in this particular thing from developers as well as from registered providers. But this would relate to grants, for example, the Affordable Homes Programme 21 to 26, which is administered by Homes England. This relates specifically to affordable housing that is not secured as part of the Section 106 process. And so what we've been asked and what we've done in recent years, in some instances, we have had Section 106 agreements on sites which have secured the policy level requirement for affordable housing, but it is also allowed for additional grant funded affordable housing to be achieved and then still to be secured in order to meet our local housing needs. And the second mechanism is obviously if landowners make an active choice to provide above policy levels of affordable housing, and that's likely to be if they're either registered providers or the council themselves. And this was recognised by the inspectors at the examination, acknowledging that the council may be willing to realise lower land values on some of the town centre sites where viability is likely to be an issue. And last slide. Oh, sorry. So Section 106 funding is secured as a commuter sum in instances where the on-site provision has not been possible. And these sums are ring-fenced and can be used in a number of different ways. So additional affordable housing proposals can be brought forward by registered providers using the Homes England grant I've already mentioned and their own providers funding. And it might be in certain instances that an additional subsidy is needed to make the proposal viable. And such instances, Section 106 funding could be used. If it's development on council land in partnership with a registered provider, particularly where additional subsidy will support the housing and it would meet the council's priority needs, we could consider funding it through the Section 106 reserve as well. And also opportunities for additional affordable housing on joint venture sites where there is the potential for gap funding, which will help to overcome viability constraints. And the final slide, thank you. So this is just a summary. So in terms of the policy, the NPPF requires us to provide a sufficient supply of deliverable housing within the area. And this needs to be informed by a local housing needs assessment. And the most recent assessment that we have within Bracknell dates from 2021, but identifies that there is a need for 338 dwellings per year within Bracknell Forest. However, in order for it to be brought forward as a planning policy, it needs to be a viable target. And in this instance, the viability appraisal done for the local plan policy suggested that a 35% limit will provide the majority of sites with a viable alternative whilst meeting that policy. And therefore that was considered by the inspectors to be the most robust and defensible approach in terms of our policy coming forward. But in terms of delivery can be supported through a range of means, for example, grant funding, the local authority or registered provider using its land ownership to prioritise provision of affordable housing. And I think we've got an example of that at the 100% affordable housing scheme that's envisaged for the former depot site, or by using Section 106 funding to subsidise schemes to ensure they meet priority needs. And we certainly considered that with one site recently. As the panel will be aware, these initiatives have been progressed by the People Directorate. I'm aware of another scheme that is going through Cabinet at the moment. And certainly the Cabinet has previously considered a report in October of last year, which was titled Increasing Affordable Housing Delivery. So that's very much a mechanism that the councillor is aware of and is seeking to use in order to make sure that the affordable housing that is delivered meets local needs. Thank you. That was the end of my presentation, but I'm really happy to take any queries that anyone's got.
No, thank you very much, Joe. Very interesting. Jody, I see you've got your hand up, but maybe if I may invoke my privilege as chair to ask the first question here. So we want to have how many? 335 affordable housing units per year. How many are we actually getting on average?
I think it's I think some of the information is provided in the AMR, which is the annual monitoring report. I don't have that figure in front of me, but I can certainly provide it and I can circulate it to all panel members, but I don't know off the top of my head. It's very variable, and I think it depends on the point in time that we're looking at delivery. If it comes forward in a flatted scheme, there tends to be no delivery for the duration of the scheme's construction, and then there would be delivery of a number of units at one point in time. If it's delivery as part of a scheme which is houses, then the delivery can happen on a much more sort of regular basis, or sort of evenly spaced basis. So there tends to be a significant variation across the years. But as I say, I'm really happy to find out that figure and circulate it to the committee for the last year that we've got.
It's not for a specific year, but say looking back over the last 5 years, are we hitting this housing target?
No, recognizing that the housing target exceeds what our policy can, even if we manage to maximize our policy application, all the housing that we're providing, it still wouldn't provide the required amount of affordable housing, because as already set out, the 338 units that were identified as being necessary as part of the 2021 report, that is above the level that a full application of our local plan policy would secure. So the answer is no, we're not meeting, in no years are we meeting the 338 target.
And are we hitting the 35% as per the planning or planning or local plan?
So on sites where there isn't a viability issue, yes, we are. We're applying that policy. Since the adoption of the policy, we're applying it fully. But as already set out, there is that option for developers to make a case in terms of it is not viable for them to provide that level of affordable housing. And we do have a significant number of circumstances where that is the position that's made. What happens as part of the planning application, the developer would put in a viability appraisal, and then we have that independently assessed. If the independent assessment that we have concludes that it is indeed not viable to provide affordable housing, then none would be provided on that site. However, just to sort of give members some assurances, and this is all set out in the housing SPD, is that we do have what's called a clawback clause in the relevant section 106 agreement. And what that requires is that at a particular trigger, that there should be a reassessment of the viability, because obviously the viability assessment that's been submitted by the developer is based on various estimates of costs at a particular point in time, which may vary one way or the other from those that are actually happen when they are constructing the site, particularly bearing in mind the fact that they could implement a planning permission up to sort of 3 years after the date that the permission is granted. So we have what's called a clawback clause, which requires a reassessment of that viability position. Obviously, at that point in time, it's generally too late to achieve the affordable housing on site, but it does allow us the opportunity to get a financial contribution in lieu of it, at least.
Yeah. Okay. So before we move on to the other councillors, just my summary question is, I would like to have a statistic on how many affordable housings we're building compared to the housing need and to our 35% target over the last 5 years on average.
Right.
That would be my question, Joe. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'll move on to Councillor Watts. You were first. Jody,
Thank
still
you,
want to
thank
talk?
you, Chair.
Yeah.
So I apologise if I missed anything at the beginning. I'm sorry I was running late. or if this is a stupid question, but how did we come to the 338 number? And when we say dwellings, do we mean homes for families, or is it a mixture of family homes and single homes? And yeah, how exactly did we get to that number? Because seeing how many years many people are on the waiting list, it feels a little low. I mean, I'm not saying that we should aim for phenomenal numbers, but how did we get that?
So that formed part of the evidence base. So basically, it was a consultant's report that we commissioned to support the new local plan, so the 2024 local plan, and that was the information. So I have put a link in the document through to that specific report, and you can see it's quite detailed in terms of, I mean, it's quite a technical matter in terms of identifying housing needs in general, and then they go through and they look at specialist housing needs as well as affordable housing needs. So it's set out in that report. And as I say, theirs was the starting point as required by the NPPF. The starting point for coming up with any policy is the housing need. And then you have to look at the viability. And in this instance, the viability meant that we had to, because if we were to try and meet that housing need, it's effectively 55% of the total number of houses that we're trying to deliver in Bracknell per year over the planned period. However, the evidence is that it wouldn't be viable for us to have a policy requiring 55% affordable housing. Basically, people would not choose to bring housing sites forward because they wouldn't be able to make any money out of it. And therefore, that's why, on the basis of the previously sort of stress tested figure of 35%, that's the figure that we're going for.
Okay, so it's a reasonable and updated number then.
Yeah, and sorry, just to go back to your second point, and it relates to any kind of dwelling unit. So it covers houses and flats. When we talk about dwellings, it's a sort of generic term.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Ball, Tina, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joe, for your presentation. As usual, they're really detailed, so I'm really pleased. Thank you very much. First of all, as a member of the Planning Committee, I haven't known there was a housing SPD. I mean, so if the rest of the Planning Committee, Tricia, if she's on this call, if you could let the rest of the Planning Committee know that there is the SPD, which would give us more background when we have to go into debate and consider the applications. However, the target looks as though it's going to mean more high-rise flats in town centre in order to meet the target. So how much more land will we need, not identified in the local plan, to hit the target?
What, to hit the target of the 338?
Per year, I assume.
Yes, I mean, I just don't have an answer for that, because I think that's a different calculation to do, really. I think what we would have to do is in the next local plan, we would have to go through the same process and look at what the affordable housing need is at that particular time, the base date for the plan, and see how best we can meet it. And, you know, obviously we're planning for a certain number of houses. Windfall sites do come forward and they would be subject to the policy. So it's possible that you will get extra affordable housing other than those just associated with the strategic sites that form part of the allocation. But I don't think it'd be possible to put a figure on how much land you need in order to provide those additional units.
Tina, you're muted. Apologies. Did you want to follow up with a question? You're muted, Tina.
Thank you. Yeah. So as a supplementary, would you mind, Chair, if you allow me to? Can I ask Joe, as Jodie, as Councillor touched on, houses, flats. Crowthorne is pretty affluent, but people are saying, when are we going to get affordable houses in Crowthorne? And that doesn't mean to say social housing. It doesn't also mean sort of houses that are split between social enterprise and other areas. So when are we actually going to bite the bullet and say none of our houses are actually affordable? I mean, 400 grand for somebody, so a young couple coming in, will they ever have an affordable house? Sorry, am I going into the realms of whimsy here?
To an extent, I'd say we need to sort that out in Westminster, don't we? Whoever's in the chair, it's maybe this is a bit too much for Joe to comment upon.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's a question about planning policy.
Yeah.
I think that that's probably. I think there are lots of elements wrapped in to that in terms of economic development and all kinds of things. So yeah, I'm afraid I don't think it's probably appropriate for me to comment on that.
Thanks for that, Joe. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
You're always very, very good on this sort of thing. So
Yeah.
thanks very much indeed.
Okay. Councillor Cochrane, Janet, you're up next, please.
Hi there, thank you. Yes, the council's priority needs are for larger family homes and also for social renting. But can I ask, the question is, what is the specialist provision? I'm not sure. Have I?
No,
Yeah,
sorry, I keep cutting across you. Apologies. So I think I'm referred to that in relation to the housing SPD and also in relation to the evidence base. So when they're talking about specialist provision, that's talking about often sort of elderly persons accommodation, which can be provided in a number of different ways.
that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
That's great. Thank you very much.
I've got my hand up. I was trying to press the button. Is it me? On that, Joe, the design element, how do we figure in when we're saying flats and social housing, the education, the buildings of schools to meet with the numbers? How is that integrated into the plans?
So as part of the local plan evidence base, we look at, so we liaise with the LEA, and obviously that's part of the authority, and also the health providers to try and identify what the future needs will be over the plan period. So we did that as part of the current local plan, and obviously any new local plan we would redo that whole process, obviously. And then what we do is when we make an allocation, if it's a strategic level allocation, we identify what infrastructure needs are going to be required to support that level of development, and they're identified in the IDP, which is the infrastructure development plan, which is on the council's website. I think it's all part of the evidence base that underpins the local plan, and then obviously the local plan we have to look at it in terms of how we will actually deliver that as part of plan development.
Thank you.
Okay. Harry, I think we had a couple of questions pre-formulated in as a carryover from session 1 on the previous slide. Yeah. So I think good questions. Maybe we would like to go through those, Joe, if you don't mind. How easy is it to agree social and affordable housing unit numbers from a planning perspective?
So it always forms part of the negotiation on any major application, and we consult with our colleagues within housing. The policy is really clear that we're looking for 35%, and so from that perspective, and if a viability appraisal hasn't been put in, then it's quite straightforward because we have that policy support. If they didn't provide that number and there was no viability evidence, it would conflict with local development plan policy, so we could refuse it. There does tend to be some negotiation in terms of making sure that it meets our priority needs. So it might be that when we consult colleagues in the housing department, that they would prefer certain units to be provided. There's a particular need for, as an example, one ground floor accessible unit, and therefore that would form part of the negotiation, and we would discuss that with the developer. But yes, in instances where viability is not raised as a concern, I wouldn't consider that it's a particular issue in terms of negotiating, because I think our policy is really clear. And to be honest, the housing SPD that we've produced fairly recently, it provides really detailed advice, so the developers don't have any doubts in terms of what our aims and ambitions are.
Okay, thank you. Next question, your personal opinion on the efficiency of the S106 process. How does it work?
In terms of as a legal process, or specifically locally?
No, for us, does it deliver what it's designed for?
Yes, I mean, obviously that comes from the Town and Country Planning Act, and it is the mechanism by which we achieve affordable housing. I'm not aware that there are any other kind of alternative processes that could be available. So yes, I think it does. It's a legal agreement. It ties the developer to certain commitments, and it allows us to secure the affordable housing to meet the needs of our housing waiting list. So I don't have any kind of concerns about the actual sort of Section 106 process.
Okay, no, thank you. And the bonus question: are you aware of any land banking in Bracknell Forest, systematic land banking, which could affect social and affordable housing provision?
To be honest, I'm not aware of any land banking. But it's not something that I would have access to that data, because we don't have information of who owns what piece of land. But certainly we feel there hasn't been many major applications that have come forward in the last year, and we think that that's probably affected by the level of uncertainty in the planning system at the moment, and also the economic circumstances. But I hear this reported a lot in the national paper. I've got no specific evidence of land banking going on.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Joe. Much appreciated your staying with us at this time of the day. Unless anybody else has another question, I'll just say thank you very much. And I wish you a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay. So,
Joe, you will get the slides round to the planning department, just at planning committee. I do think what Tina said earlier, it is planning, and I think in actual fact, I think all councillors should be aware of these sort of things, because it is their wards that it could affect. I really do think.
Yeah, the presentation is appended to the agenda of tonight, so you can take it from there, Dorothy. And I don't think there's any privacy concerns. I think this can be shared freely within
it should be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And very, very informative, Joe, as always. But I still do have concerns about the town centre and the planning designs as such, and parking and education, the lot.
Yeah, and living at the outskirts, traffic is always fun, as we know. So let's stay on topic. People, I think we need to make progress. We move on to item 5. Review of planning information on developments, and we have been provided with information regarding a couple of recent developments, which I found personally quite interesting and illuminating. Maybe Harry, do you have can you share that on screen, so maybe we can go through that part of the agenda?
The document itself?
Yes, page 17 following on of the agenda, if you don't mind.
Give me 1 second. I'll just stop sharing so that I don't show everyone. Not the time for the computer to go slowly.
No worries.
Here we are.
Smashing. Thank you very much. So I think on the following slides we see the the actual outcome on recent developments, I don't know if many of you had the time to review the slides in the first place, and hence also my previous questions to Joe on how efficient we are actually in implementing our housing targets within Brecon Forest. So let's scroll down slowly and simply focus on the number of affordable dwellings secured, for example, compared to the total number of dwellings. Let's scroll down a little bit, Harry. We'll just run through that and maybe we want to go back in detail. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, the grand total is 15% for the first development. Let's scroll down a little further. So Butlers Park. So here we go, 10%, 10%, 14%, that's all right. 11.5 affordable in total on aggregate, 115. Scroll down, please. Yeah. I think there was a 0 here on this one, and scrolling a bit further down. That looks comparable, doesn't it? No, that's good. That was Taylor Wimpey and Warfield, at least 25% here. Okay, so my summary of that is that we are 35% is in reality it's a stretch target. We're not achieving it, and we're missing it by a considerable margin. We might have make alternative provision, but we're not producing the number of housing which our residents actually require. That would be my brief and brutal summary on this particular set of slides. I look forward to hear your opinion if you have had the time to review the slides, and if your personal lived experience as councillors maybe has a different opinion to offer on that. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, Tina, please. You're still muted.
Thank you,
Apologies.
Chair. Thank you,
There you
Chair.
go.
Thank you, Chair. The TRL, if we go back, is 25%. So what we're looking at is very likely an old target. I'm not sure. So we need to make sure that what we've got historically is not helping what we need to put together now. So that's the problem. What we've ticked in the box for something else is now coming up that we are failing in our targets. So we've got to be a bit more robust and look at both at Park, for instance, lately. We need to have a look at what was actually delivered, the evergreens, as affordable housing, because I don't think they did. I don't think they met. Taylor Wimpey did not meet. Dot, if you're there, I think you might be on my line here. She's not, I think, but
yeah,
however,
I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Design elements and change of plans after whilst they're building.
That's right. That's right. So we've got to really keep on top, Chair. Really keep on top of what is said to be delivered, what is we expect to be delivered, what actually is delivered. So we need to ensure that enforcement is really on top of the developments. Do you agree, Councillor Hayes?
Very much so. I'm very concerned about what we're going through at the moment with a certain site.
Yeah. Well, there are two sites, aren't there?
And I was just going to say, it's not just one site now. It's two that we're
sites.
aware of.
Yeah.
That once the planning's there, it's what's internally. It's all right to look at it, but it's what's internally being delivered.
Exactly. So therefore, what was the number of affordable houses that has been asked for or told that we're going to have by Deanfield Homes in Binfield? That'd be an interesting one, Dot, won't it?
very much so.
Yeah. So I think we can get detailed data. I think what Joe also said, that it's spread over sites, it's spread over years. So I think it's very important to look at averages in this case. I think clearly most of us would like to live in Crowthorne. Yeah, Tina, I think you agree. But
I'm
not
sure
everybody
we
can.
would. We're delighted to have you, Christoph.
Yeah,
Delighted
I
to
know.
have you.
You're just too bloody expensive, you know. We can't afford that.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
If we are saying that these houses are being delivered and not delivered to spec, and not being delivered to the number of affordable houses that we expect, then we ain't going to meet our targets.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that's what we want to drill into, whether the policies which we have in place, which are certainly compliant with the national planning policy, deliver for our residents. And given the significant need for affordable housing, specifically here in Bracknell Forest, I think this is a question which is, well, it's a question. I personally, I do not have the impression that we are getting there, but let's gather the data to support the evidence, to support that statement, and see what recommendations we can make on the back of that.
Super. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Yep. An observation on the enforcement issue. Councillor Collins has suggested, based on her experience in the planning committee, that we do a separate environment and community review on enforcement. I wanted to discuss it following the next session, which you have next Wednesday. I want to discuss it with the panel members to see if they agree that this is a good idea. And I'll put something out. I need to shape it a little bit, what we propose to do. I'll try to send this to you by end this week.
Yeah, can I just mention the fact that the planning enforcement document was not peer reviewed and it didn't come from the committee. It came from that one person. So we all need to have a look and we all need to contribute. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And because I will be away, I will try and come on, but I know there's going to be some problems out there.
Yeah.
But I will try to come on because I am very concerned with certain things on this. Very concerned.
Yeah. Maybe we will also have a separate session on the enforcement. Enforcement. Maybe we just have an initial email conversation. Okay, I think let's not drag that out any further. I think does anybody else on the call have observations on the numbers which have been shared in the appendix to the agenda?
No, but apparently I have a report that I didn't read properly.
No comment. All right, then thank you very much, everyone. That concludes item 5. We now have Andy, if you're still awake and with us, then showtime for you, Europe. And we're looking forward to hear your personal impressions first on what you heard today. And it would be interesting to see what a developer makes out of the intel which we shared today.
Might be stuck on mute.
Yep.
On mute.
No, I think
we scared him. I don't know.
He's stuck on mute, unfortunately. I don't know, Andy, whether you want to leave and join again and we can see if that works.
While we're waiting, Chair, what developer is this gentleman fronting? I don't know. I've not heard of him. Say again, sweetie.
Carla
Yes.
Carla Holmes.
Carla. Oh, interesting. Right.
So, I mean, Harry reached out to all developers which are active here in our borough, the major developers. I followed up with the chaser, and they weren't answering. Well, we can't force them, can we?
Oh, that looks better. And
can you see and hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry about that. It's normally
Hey,
100%, 99% reliable, it turns out, not 100%. Apologies for that. Right. Yeah, just my credentials first. So I'm Andy Pennell, Affordable Housing Director for the Carla Group. Carla is, we have 8 regions, 3 of which are in Scotland and 5 in England. And I have been doing this for a very long time. In fact, my dad was in the industry and he built some homes in Bracknell, affordable homes, which ended up being owned by Southern Housing Group. Little side bit. Yeah, so my responsibility for the Carla Group is to oversee every site, because every site has affordable housing on it. So I'm familiar with the policies of 30 to 50 local authorities, and we work, we have a dozen sites per region in England, so we've got 60 sites maybe, and at any one time we're looking at another 60 for the future. So we've got sort of like 60 on the go and maybe 60 in the pipeline. And my responsibility is to ensure that the component of the project, the site, the development that relates to affordable housing is affordable and viable and deliverable, fundamentally. I'm afraid I haven't prepared a presentation because I didn't know that was the format, but I did Harry did tip me off in advance with some queries that you have, councillors, and I'm very happy to take those, or I can start firing off with some opinions. It's up to you. I
think, Andy, first of all, thanks really for facing the music here and agreeing to this sort of mini dragons. Then I promise we behave on behalf of my members. If they don't, I'll cut them off, but they know that. I think, first of all, I think we will be interested in your opinion on what you've heard tonight. Personally, I'd like to ask as well, if you could put that into a wider context. Is that a Bracknell-specific issue which we are facing, or is this a nationwide issue, given your wide reach across the country?
It's a nationwide issue. The challenge for delivery of affordable housing is, I think we've been in a housing crisis since the 80s, and it's never got any better. In the old days, we used to have Section 52 agreements, which are now the modern equivalent is Section 106. There's been an obligation to provide affordable housing on site, and for the sites I've been involved with over the years, we've always done it. I mean, I think one misconception about house builders, developers, is that we try and avoid it. We absolutely don't. Every site that I'm involved in is all about averting the risk that we have in commercial terms, but balancing that with the requirements of the local authority. Like yourselves, it's usually all set out. Your Joe's very helpful summary of how you arrived at your targets, no different from anyone else. You've got a schma, you've got data. You checked it was viable, albeit 4 years ago, and I'll very happily describe to you what's happened in the last 4 years. So it's out of date, but we work within it, and most local authorities recognise this, recognise that the market is not in the same place it was 2 years ago, 1 year ago, let alone 4 years ago or further. And therefore, policies that are set in cast in stone need to be flexible. And I am negotiating with any number of local authorities where there's either no registered provider interest, or that the interest is from the for-profit registered providers who, the clue is in the name, aren't offering sufficient money to pay for these homes. And viability is across the board, not just Bracknell Forest.
Thank you, Andy. I think I'll pick you up on the pointer which you left in your argument. What happened over the last 4 years?
Well, you can trace it back to, I think it was October 22, where Liz Truss did some stuff, and what we saw was, well, it's not just that. That's probably the start, but the registered provider scenario prior to about 2022 was that most of them were very, very keen to grow their business, provide homes for people in housing need. And indeed, the entire planning policy that Joe ran through is based on, we buy the land, get the planning permission, build them, sell them to a registered provider. And my job was to work with the registered providers that were interested, frankly, get the best price, but we provide the best product, and come to some kind of arrangement, and we would deliver it. Ever since 2022, we've seen that appetite, financial capacity from registered providers go through the floor. Not necessarily Bracknell, but, well, Bracknell included, but across the board, where before I'd have maybe 10 registered providers interested in buying 50 units of affordable housing on a phase or a specific site. I'm now lucky if I get 1 or 2, and the amount they're paying is less than it used to be. So those are real hard commercial considerations for us, because we buy the land, or agree to buy the land, based on a planning policy, because we've got to go and get planning. And then when that isn't deliverable, that's when it looks like we're bleating. We're not. We're just trying to balance that commercial concern with trying to get planning permission. It needs a deeper dive into why registered providers aren't doing it now. There's been damp and mold concerns and AWAB's law. You'll have read about all these things. Obviously, fire safety concerns post Grenfell, and the inward-looking way in which they look at their existing stock. Many of them have got many, many thousands of homes. Silver merged with Abry, and they're looking inwardly at investing any spare cash they've got in updating their existing stock. So what they do is they've refocused, and they're not looking at growing their business as much as they were, and therefore the Section 106 appetite has fallen away. Compounded, if I may quickly throw this in as well, appreciate we have a councillor waiting, compounded by the fact that when Homes England, through the MHCLG, announced currently £39 billion worth of capital available to support development, for clarity, none of that is for Section 106. So any RPs that do have financial capacity to develop will now turn and face Homes England and say, yes, we'll have some of your grants, we'll do our own schemes. So even fewer RPs are interested in buying Section 106. So please go away with, if there's only one message that you go away with today, it's that we don't try and get out of affordable housing. We want to provide it. It provides certainty. There's no risk, because we just have to build it, because we've got a buyer in contract. We know how much they're going to pay, and they pay it as we build it. It provides cash flow. That's different from private homes where we have to build it and then get the revenue. So please remember that we want to do Section 106 homes on site as per policy wherever we can, and it slows things down when we can't, and we have to talk to the planners about viability and so on.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was very interesting. Councillor Watts, Jodie, please.
Yeah, so you're saying we can't all move to Crowthorne and live with Tina? Sorry, that was a joke. So is what you're saying that those companies that have the stock are not investing anymore, they're just updating old stock and nobody's investing in new developments?
Not all and not nobody, but certainly that is the current trend. And if you look at any of the housing press, the HBF, even MHCLG about 2 weeks ago, the new housing minister Steve Reed said it's not good enough that the RPs aren't buying 106s. This has gone to the very top, and I attended meetings with Homes England, MHCLG, because it's not just me. It's Barrett Redrow, it's Taylor Wimpey, it's Bellway. None of us can find sufficient capacity within the RP sector to buy our 106s. And
does anybody know the cause of that?
Yes, it's very widely understood. Very widely understood, and we're hopeful. I mean, the government have done a 10-year rent settlement for RPs, so they know they've got a predictable rental income now, which they didn't have until a couple of months ago. So that helps them plan their business. And also, we hope that in the new, it's called the Social and Affordable Homes Programme. It was the 21-26 programme. The new one should be launched, the prospectus, this 39 billion. When that prospectus comes out in November at some point, I'm told just after the budget, so it might be early December, then we hope, us developers hope, that there'll be something in there that not forces but encourages those RPs with development capacity to not just focus on that programme, but to also look towards Section 106s. Because there's a problem now. 1.5 million homes generates, on your figures, 500,000 affordable homes. We haven't got the capacity for the RPs haven't got the capacity now to buy those, to buy what's on the table now.
But you will be able to with the new scheme.
We hope the new scheme will encourage, but I'm about 20% sure it will. So if that doesn't happen, then I'm afraid there's going to be a lot more viability discussions, because if there's no one out there to buy it, or we're offered £150 a foot when it costs £200 a foot to build it.
I'm sorry to go back to this one, but you said that people aren't investing, and you said that you knew why. Can you explain to me? I mean, feel free to explain this in layman's terms, because this is not my forte. Why are people not investing right now?
Okay, so it's the RPs. They're not investing because, well, the for-profit ones aren't investing because they can generate better returns in other markets, and and they're all backed by major
like the private market.
Funding. Correct. The traditional for non-profit, charitable, if you like, housing associations, like Silver, Brattle Forest Homes used to be, and Housing Solutions, and Metropolitan Thames Valley, people like that, all the names you will have heard of, they are higher interest rates, borrowing rates, a focus of any capital they do have on their existing stock. It's just not, Section 106 just isn't in their business plan. I haven't done a deal with MTVH for a couple of years now, and I used to do them 2 or 3 a year across, but it's not just them. They're lovely people, and I would really hope
so it's just across the board.
Yeah, and I would urge you to spend 20 minutes having a Google of this about the RP sector. I mean, there's a good document that the HBF produced called, and it was produced last year. This has been going a while. It's called Bid Farewell, and that's a reference to the fact that in our terminology, housing associations bid for the affordable homes on a Section 106 situation. And the title of the document is Bid Farewell. In other words, it's farewell to bids. RPs just aren't bidding anymore. And it's sort of remained that ever since. So, I mean, this sounds like a sob story, but it is an essential component. Planning requirement for affordable homes on site. We say yes, we sign a 106. We try and get an RP to buy it, and we can't.
Has the price of the
thank you.
affordable... Sorry, Jodie. I thought we were finished. Andy, has the price per square foot, which you have to invest for affordable homes, has that increased as well over the last 4 years?
Build cost has, and the expectation, the origins, because I'm old enough to know this, the origins of all Section 106 affordable housing obligations used to be free serviced land. There was a time when we would, as developers, just give free serviced land to an RP, and then they would go and get a builder. That morphed over time to be, well, why would you spend in today's money £250, £300 a foot to get your own builder when we'll do it for 200, 220? So that's really the kind of maths of it.
Okay. Do we have any other specific, or say any specific follow-up questions to Andy at the moment? We have some questions prepared, as you know. Okay, let's move to the prepared questions, Harry, if you don't mind. I think they were on the previous slide.
Yeah, the prepared questions are split into planning, build, and handover. So I don't know if you want to take them one after the other.
Do you want me to read them and answer?
I mean, Andy, I think, do I have to read it out? I mean, you had the questions beforehand.
Sure.
And
yeah, okay. Well, we're through them. Yeah, okay. Is sustainability factored in? Yeah. When designing social and affordable homes, solar heat pump, etc. What we offer to registered providers is the same as we sell to the private market. Carla own a timber frame factory, so we build sustainable timber frame buildings, not necessarily when it's blocks of flats, but certainly the houses. We have our own set of house types. Again, where there's capacity with the infrastructure, all our homes have air source heat pumps, so we have a gasless solution where it's possible. Legacy sites that we've been working on, like Crowthorne for a while, not always possible. But certainly if we pick up a new site now, we'll start from scratch with sustainable features. And that applies to both the affordable and the private. And we do, solar photovoltaics on roofs. We do EV chargers.
Good.
Parking provision, that's dictated by the local planning authority. We don't decide these things, you know that. And the answer is yes. Is the simple answer, because there's no difference in car ownership, particularly these days, because cars are relatively cheap. What does the planning process for social and affordable homes feel like for developers? Well, I've been doing this for an awfully long time. I've got used to it. It's clunky. There's quite a lot of, I won't bore you with it, but there's quite a lot of nuances. Relevant to Bracknell Forest is that you have a requirement for I think a mix of about 50-50 social rent, affordable rent, but the affordable rent has got a local housing allowance cap, which doesn't feature in the Section 106, and therefore some registered providers will price up stuff for me and then notice that, and then they'll change it, i.e. reduce the price to me. So there's a lot of quite nerdy detail that gets in the way, but largely, yeah, I mean, we know it's 35%. We know what your tenure split is. Before we buy a site, we always go and talk to RPs. Of course we do. How could I write a board report that says the affordable housing is going to be worth £5 million if I haven't checked that with some RPs? So we talk to them before we've even bought the site. Developers are quite often criticised for not talking. So by the time we get to the actual planning application, you know, the affordable housing part of it is all pretty much buttoned up in our heads. How do we approach the economics? That's key. Well, we're intentionally a profit-making business. Economics is absolutely crucial. For my part, I talk to the register providers, and before we commit to buying a site, we get an offer. And we can't commit with them at that point because we haven't got outlines. Sometimes we haven't got reserved matters, and through that process things will change, and time will pass. And a week is a long time in politics. Well, a year is a long time in development. And the RP that gave us an offer when we bought the site is now not in the market, or they've said, we've changed our metrics, we can't pay you that now. So the economics are risky. Our approach is to try and de-risk it, but we are at the mercy of the RP sector.
Okay. Harry, what other questions did we have?
So we have these questions under build.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we always build what's in the process. I noticed it, Harry, in your sheet earlier, there was the 10% down at Crowthorne, but you also said after 10%, which is compliant with the Section 106. So, I mean, I wasn't around when L&G got that planning permission, but there was a viability justification there. It says thou shalt build this many homes. That's what we do. So that, for my part, well, you wouldn't let us build it if we didn't build what was required by the Section 106. What are the challenges in the delivery? We're quite good at building, so there's no real challenges other than the usual labour, subcontractor situations, Section 278 agreements, all the technical stuff that goes with the build process. In terms of social and affordable, once we're in contract with the registered provider prior to going on site, 99 times out of 100. So, and that's when, frankly, my job's done, and we leave it to the build team to work with the RP for the delivery.
Okay, Councillor Mackenzie-Ball, Tina, please.
Yes, thank you. Right, okay. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Can I just say, I remember seeing the plans in 2008, what the TRL was going to look like. I mean, it was a struggle to go through, but nobody ever said to us councillors then, you need to be talking to Carla Holmes, at L&G it was in those days, to talk about RPs. Never did. How will you make sure that next time you pick up a nice development, shall we say, in the Bracknell Forest area, you'll be more able to have a dialogue between councillors and officers?
The dialogue between us and the councils and officers, we absolutely love that, because we get to explain what our hopes and dreams are. Talking to RPs is more difficult because we haven't at that point selected them, and they don't have the capacity or resource to engage, because it could potentially be abortive, because we might be working with someone else in 3 years' time. Go for it.
Yeah, may I just say that this group should be looking, and I think it might be on the agenda somewhere, that we will be looking at RSLs.
Yeah.
So if the registered providers can also be in the dialogue, that there's an awful lot us councillors can do to negotiate, shall we say, in parentheses, persuade.
Please do. Please do. I think that would be incredibly helpful. There used to be, I don't know, this is true for Bracknell, I used to work in registered providers, and I used to attend a lot of, we called them local authority liaison meetings, where there would be a batch of 4 or 5 regular developing RPs in a local authority, and the housing team in the local authority would meet with them, and they would talk about schemes that are coming up, their own schemes as well as developer ones, and there would be a dialogue. I think that died 10 years ago, really, as a functional. I don't know, the world's changed. I don't know why, but there is a. I definitely say, I think you've really hit the nail on the head there. I think there is a real disconnect between local authority, developer. We talk a lot because we're making the planning application and we're in your offices a lot. And then the RP. I don't know how tight to this they are. It would be great if they were, because we would get more certainty.
Yeah.
Just could I follow on from that just very quickly? Because some of us councillors have been around and we know the history. We know what's in the area and what has. Martin's Heron Forest Park and Warren was something I sat in on all those years ago when we were designing and that. So that, you know, it's to that
you
point,
need to work, you need to work with us who've got that knowledge.
We know what is expected. If you're a good councillor, the residents don't send you emails, they knock on your door.
Knock on your door. Yeah, I had one today.
Yeah. Okay. But yes, I do think it has changed drastically and not for the better.
Just say let's move forward to our question. I think the quality difference, this is not meant that we'll have subsidy in all affordable housing, or God knows, something like that. But do they get the same windows, for example, same doors, same tiles? Or is it, how do you make the economy is basically, how do you make the affordable home affordable? Is it the sizing? Are you shrinking them, or what's the magic potion?
Okay. Your Section 1 agreement, Section 106 agreements require us to build 10-year blind homes, which means they look the same from the outside. So yes, they're the same windows, same tiles. You wouldn't give us planning permission unless we're doing that. You wouldn't give us reserve matters. Very happy to do that. We've been doing it for years. We have standard house types. They are, all our affordable homes are at or in excess of the nationally described space standards, NDSS. Google that. It's a fascinating document. They're bigger. They're bigger than the private ones as a rule. Okay, so you've got, because they specify this much storage space, that much cupboard space in the kitchen. We have been dictated to by Homes England and the Housing Corporation before. Space standards go back to the Parker Morris days back in the 60s, and affordable housing has always been, in my lifetime, bigger and better than the private, because the last part of your question, how do we afford this? It's reflected the economics of this. We know that we're going to have to build XYZ on a site before we buy the site, or we try and interpret planning to work that out. We talk to an RP, they say, we'll pay you X for it. That X gets plugged into our appraisal, and in that appraisal, we get a land value. So we make sure the land value we give the site owner when we buy it reflects that obligation.
Yeah, I see.
That's how we pay for it. We don't pay for it, the landowner pays for it. That's true of all Section 106 obligations if you think it through. It's not the developer, is it? The person that owned the land originally got less for their land because of all these obligations. The challenge is, back to the big picture, if that gets too suppressed, landowners won't release land. And that's the big challenge for this government, because if with building safety levy and all the various constraints, and in London, you'll have heard recently that they're talking about doing far fewer affordable homes because it's just not viable, because no one's given up their land for residential development, because it's worth next to nothing time you've added on all these obligations.
Okay. No, thanks. That was a candid answer, Andy. And I didn't want to. I just want to prod you a little bit to find out what's happening. Thank you for that.
Problem on land banking.
Yeah.
Ask me about land banking.
Yes,
Should I ask you about
please?
Hey, Andy, tell us about land banking.
Think about it. Why would I buy a site and then sit on it? It's going to cost me interest. Yeah. It costs money. It's money that we can't do anything with. We're sitting on it in the vain hope that house prices will go up. Tell you what goes up: build costs, cost of interest. There's been so many inquiries at government level into land banking, and turns out, we're not doing it. So we don't. Simple as that. As soon as we've got a site, if we paid for it, we damn well try and get planning permission, get on site, build it, because it's hemorrhaging interest. That's the truth of the matter. And
Okay.
that's not just not Carla, that's everyone. But
Yeah.
I just and that, please look into that as well. That is absolutely the case.
No, that's all right, Andy.
Can I prevail upon your good-natured chair? Can I talk to you, Andy? In the old days, when you had a block of flats, the developer would do just a little bit less than the 0.5 hectares. So we didn't get the affordable housing. And we did an awful lot of saying, no, we're not happy about this.
Right.
What do you think about the developers that don't give us what we need because of sort of, not playing the game, shall we say?
I.e. they're purposely designing schemes to be below the threshold. Company I used to work for used to be in that market. I mean, Carla just did bigger sites, so that's never a thing for us. And if the threshold is 10 units, then you'd magically see many 9-unit schemes. What do I think of it? I think it's business, if I'm honest. I think you're focusing on the wrong thing with respect. I think the big gains.
Please. Yeah.
You'd only get 3 units out of it. Seriously, worry about the big stuff. There's far bigger fish to fry than that. Listen. The reason you've got a threshold is because it's been tested through viability below that to not be viable. So if people are avoiding doing it, it's because it wouldn't be viable. So that.
Yeah,
so it
it's
wouldn't
just,
help us,
can I
basically.
just say, and I'm not telling tales out of school, but there is a small development in Crowthorne. I'm sorry to keep bringing Crowthorne up, but that's where I live. There was an extent of 5, wants to put on 8 on it, and the 8's been chucked out, and he's not doing anything. So we've got a blooming great hole in the wall and in the floor, and
but
nothing.
The reason, and they own the site, and probably I assume, and the reason they're going for more is because it would make probably better margins, or maybe, and this is quite possible, maybe it needs to be 8 to make a margin. I could believe that in the current climate. Maybe 5 units just wouldn't stack. It would cost you more to build it. Now, bearing in mind what they've paid for the land, cost of finance, everything else, it probably isn't worth their time doing it.
Yeah,
so
that's when we've got a hole in the ground.
That's the real world. If you live next door, absolutely, but
that's sad.
Yeah, it is, but it's not new.
Yeah,
economics of development.
Do we have any more questions for Andy prepared?
Just these 3 on the handover. I'm not sure if they've been answered already and what Andy said already.
I get handover. We've got a bill contract, and it says I don't. Handover's just the end of the contract. We get practical completion. We do a big pack, and we give them the keys, and 99 times out of 100, no problems. So warranty, and we do NHBC the whole time. So we provide that. It's all there.
And I think you gave us a very good insight about your about the S106 and how it works from your side, from your perspective. I'm grateful for that. That adds value to what this committee is doing. Do you have anything to add on the S106? Any other points which you would like to make?
I think the government is pushing for a standard template, which might well be useful. I think there's too many parts of the council, not necessarily Bracknell, just generally, involved in the process. They all basically say the same thing. These are the things you've got to provide. Why are we reinventing the wheel every single time? Why does it take 9, 12 months sometimes to agree these things? Certainly there's some big ones with some extraordinary things. But as a mechanism, it works. But it's clunky, but isn't everything,
Okay. Andy, I think unless anybody else has any questions at the moment. Councillor Watts, Jody.
I mean, this might be a long answer, but you know, feel free to email me. What else could I be doing as a councillor to help with this? I mean, given that I'm not actually on planning, is there anything I could do to help things along?
I think.
Now, Dot's either congratulating me or she's laughing at me.
From my perspective, I'm not sure you can, because we tend to deal with the planning officers, don't we? We don't really get to talk. We don't get really to talk to you. Sometimes that would be incredibly helpful, wouldn't it? Because you know, we're the ones that are actually building it and control the output. And the reason we're all here is there's 338 people a year that would like a home, and I'm as committed to delivering affordable housing. If you knew my full background, you'd know why, as you are. It's just navigating. It's a good word, through this whole process. So any allies, particularly powerful councillors, would be wonderful. So, but how you get into that process, I don't know. That's something for cleverer people than me to work out.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say I was powerful, but it really does matter to me. I live in a social house. My children will probably only be able to live in social houses. You know, private rent is really not an option for any of mine, unless we happen to win the lottery in the next few years. So yeah, so this really matters to me and a lot of friends that I know. Thank you, and thank you. The presentation was really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any other question at this point? Then I would say a big thank you to our patient and very vocal witness, Andy. Really, thanks for joining us tonight. That was extremely helpful and useful. As you know, this was we recorded it, so basically you will find your views reflected in the minutes of the meeting. Well, you're a witness. I trust you're okay with that, obviously. The findings which we will have, we will make based on the witness you gave today, will be reflected in the report which we will develop. And I think seriously, thanks for talking to us. I mean it. It was really a good evening. Quite efficient, and I think we learned a lot.
Thank you for the opportunity, and Harry knows my number if he wants to dig in again and clarify anything. So,
okay,
no worries.
So, cool. Then I think with that we are completed with item number 6, which was our last point on the agenda. We don't have any other business, but I'm just asking out to you, any other business tonight? And if not, then I'm closing this meeting now. And sorry, Tina, apologies.
Yeah. No, very quickly, I apologise. Just to say to Andy, you didn't come with a presentation, which was great, because this was more fluid, more fluent than being stuck with the presentation. The dialogue has been absolutely fantastic. It's been to and fro. So for me, thank you very much indeed.
And I'd like to put 2 pennyworth in there as well, Andy, because it used to be, and I'm going back when it was Charles Church's built most of Martin's Heron and all that down there. The ward councillor or councillors were permitted with officers to sit with the developers and get the best for it. That all went, but we did have that. We really did.
Yeah.
But there you go. Things they change, not for the, there you go.
The only constant in life.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The only constant in life is change, as you all know, and we're all going through that. But with these words, and thanks for your observations as well, Dorothy, I suggest we close that meeting for tonight. And again, Harry, thank you very much for setting us
Thanks,
up,
Harry.
keeping minutes, and keeping us honest.
Thank you, Harry.
Yes.
So the meeting is now closed. Kindly stop the recording, Harry. Please stay on.